For years, I told people in our community, we are not a church. We look like a church, we act like a church, we are not a church. What we really are is a lab. We're doing experiments trying to figure stuff out. And the stuff we're trying to figure out, church. The folks who gathered at the beginning of Common Thread, we were the walking church wounded. We knew from experience that something was bad wrong with church. But we'd also experienced something beautiful. So instead of joining the exodus out the door, we stayed and we started a lab. We started a space where we could figure out what went wrong and we could figure out a way forward. Now, we have learned a lot, more than can fit into this basic introduction to being a leader at Common Thread. So first, I'd like to point you to a couple of resources. Resource number one is the book that I wrote that got us kicked out of our denomination. It's called Rethinking Our Story, Can We Be Christian in the Quantum Era? You're taking a leadership role in our community, so you get one for free. Talk to me any Sunday. I'll show you where the box is. If you'd prefer to read on Kindle, you got to buy that one. But there's a link to Amazon in the notes. Now, early on, we realized that our unhealthy behaviors were rooted in a meaning-making story at the core of our religion that had lost its way because it wasn't even the original story that gave us the impetus, the goodness at the beginning. So we did a lot of reimagining how we think about God and how we think about the Bible and how we think about human nature and sin and salvation and the afterlife. Now, the book is long, and I wrote it for people living in traditional religion. Consequently, the language might be a little bit churchy for you. So if you're not up for that, I did a series of 10-minute videos to cover the main points of the book for our children's team to help them talk to our kids. How we think about, how we talk about the core concepts in our religion. It's on the website. There's a link to that too in the notes. Well, if you watch those videos, you're going to get the essence. You'll miss the documentation, you'll miss the history, you'll miss the research, but you'll get the main point. Now, the second resource is an online course. It's also on our website, also a link in the notes. After rethinking our religion's core story in the lab, we started doing experiments, how to be and how to do religious organization. So there's a section in the online course that deals with our origin story, why we became a lab, how we did it, what we were after, what we hoped for. There's also a section on how rethinking our story impacts the kinds of churches we build. Because if your story tells you that you know everything there is to know about God, what God likes, what God doesn't like, who God likes, who doesn't like, who God doesn't like, you're going to build one kind of church, usually an authoritarian kind. But if your story tells you you don't know any of that stuff, that all we have are metaphors for experiencing some small dimension of the divine, well, you're going to build a very different kind of church, a much more humble church. Same thing if your story tells you one thing about sin or one thing about oneness or the other. You'll build a different kind of church. In that course, we've got a section also on norms and practices. These are things that we've test-driven through the years and then we found these things just work. There's a helpful way to approach pain when people are in pain, a helpful way to have a community-owned community, a helpful approach to authority, thinking about what it means, how it works, norms and practices that run counter to many of the churches that we grew up in because start with a different meaning-making story, you end up with a different kind of church. And then finally, of course, there's a section about the organizing matrix of our community, working the circle. These are the things that we've learned out through the years, doing the communal practices and the contemplative and the learning and the serving. So I hope you'll take advantage of those. They'll give you a sense of the place that you are beginning to help shape. As you add your flavor, as you add your energy, your time, and your love, it'll help you understand what came before, help you understand the foundation on which you're building. So check the resources out, learn about our history, our values, what we've learned.